Czechast, a podcast in English about Czech and Moravian society, history, culture and economy.
Welcome to Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. I'm Vít Pohanka and my guest today is Kateřina Šafaříková, a prominent Czech journalist, head of the opinion desk at Seznam Zprávy, a Czech news site, a former European Union correspondent in Brussels and a long-time foreign policy reporter. What I find really fascinating about Kateřina is the fact that she has spent years observing Czech politics and society from abroad and then returned home. And sometimes, as she says, it's not big political events that reveal the most, but small everyday moments. Here is an example. After moving back to Prague from Brussels, her daughter asked her a question that completely caught her off guard.
Mum, why no one is behaving nicely to the others here in Czechia?
And really, I was struck by this question, and it left me speechless for a few seconds. And I asked her, what do you mean by not being nice? And she said, well, you see it in trams or at school, no one is being nice really. And then we talked about it, and I realized this. It's another topic that I cover quite a lot, is that there is this latent aggressivity or aggression in the Czech society.
It's a child's question, simple, direct and hard to brush aside. A question about behavior on trams, at school, in public space, and about what we quietly accept as normal. And it's also a question that feels especially relevant after the political changes of the past year. Because when we talk about Czechia after the 2025 elections, the issue may not be whether something uniquely Czech is happening, but whether we are living through familiar global pattern.
I don't think the Czech situation is in any way specific. I just think that we are in Trumpian era or Trumpian version, but Czech version of Trumpian era.
So, in this episode of Czechast, I sat down with Kateřina in the Czech radio cafe that you will probably hear in the background, and we talked about her personal journey into journalism, about living abroad and coming back home, and about what today's Czech experience is like.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.
So my name is Kateřina Šafaříková and I am a journalist and I am what you call foreign correspondent. So whole my professional career I was more interested in what's happening outside, behind the Czech borders rather than inside. So yes, I'm a foreign correspondent.
We will get in more detail to where you've been, but coming here actually, Katka, I was thinking, would you remember when we first met in person?
I actually do remember, so it was in Brussels, where we were both posted. I was there twice, posted twice, so first time from 24 until 29, and in 2021 until 2023, and I think we met in either 24 or 25. Am I right?
You are not.
Oh,
the first time we met, it was in Brussels actually, but it was in 2003. And we were both in a group of Czech journalists who were invited by the United States Department of State. We were at the NATO headquarters and we were having discussions with different people from the staff at the US representation at NATO. And it was in summer of 2003. And why I thought it pertinent to mention here is that we had a lunch with Nick Burns, is his name, who's a very kind of high-profile US diplomat. He later served under President Biden as the ambassador to China even. But when we met him, when he had lunch with us, he was the US representative at NATO, permanent representatives. And you questioned him then, during that lunch, why the United States doesn't attack Zimbabwe, of all places. Do you remember that?
I actually do remember. So just back to your remark. So I at least got the city right, despite not getting the time spent right. Anyways, I do remember because it was in a time when US launched the attack on Iraq. And me as a young journalist, young at that time, I was sort of amazed, but maybe surprised by the fact that you would attack one country on quite shallow evidences while you would not, act in a different place of the planet and do away with
they should be consistent.
Very hard dictator. They should be consistent when dealing with dictators. They should have been consistent. It was not the case, and I was struck by that. I felt it as a very pertinent question, I think.
No, I think it was great, and why I felt important to mention that is that it kind of shows that you have this great mind, that you connect the points and
different dots on the planet.
Different dots, on the planet, and you definitely showed it then. Only I was told by someone from the US staff that be careful, don't mention that, or it will give ideas to his head, meaning Nick Burns, and that you probably, might have caused an attack.
Might cause an attack, US attack on Zimbabwe and Mugabe. Right.
Back to that. How did you become a journalist? How did that come about?
I actually know very precisely, since it was during my secondary grammar school studies. I think I was 15 or 16, and we had this case when I think you know it as well. But so we have this tradition of taking off your shoes if you are at someone's house or apartment, and the same relates or concerns school. So when I was studying, we had to change shoes every day when coming to school. So you take off your shoes and put on the slippers. And we had this, it was a time when we didn't have, as students, we didn't have those individual lockers, which is the case now. In that time, we had this massive iron cage, very dirty, dark, shallow, a lot of dust. And I hated it, with a lot of holes in the cage. So it was very often the case that you would have your new fancy sport shoes, and in the afternoon it would get stolen because just someone took it, as we couldn't lock it. So, and we had this school magazine, school journal. And I had an idea that I would write a piece about the fact that, we don't have our lockers, our shoes, get stolen on a regular basis. Plus the teachers at that time, they didn't change their shoes. So I felt it very unfair, that mandatory sort of taking off our shoes. And I wrote a piece about it with very funny title. I think the title was in Czech, Bačko Gate, as of slippers gate. Obviously it was an allusion to Watergate. And it was in the school journal. And when it appeared in the school journals the next days, many my fellow schoolmates were coming to me and telling me, it's great you did it, it's a good piece, and you're courageous, it's great that someone really said it out loud. And I said, and that moment I realized, I didn't know that, but you can actually change something. You can actually matter. It actually matters what you write. So I think that at that time that was the first time I think I realized that maybe I wanted to be a journalist.
That's a great story. So you were a kind of teenage muckrake journalist, something like that.
Yes, yes, exactly. And then, then I just applied at the university, and I passed it. And I passed the exam. So
you studied journalism?
I studied journalism, and then I studied political sciences. So I have these two legs.
The first guest of Czechast more than 2 years ago actually was Martin Řezníček, our colleague from the Czech television, and he studied journalism as well. And he told me that when he speaks to students now, as he sometimes does, of journalism, he says, you should try something different too. That it's not very good if you just study journalism and then stay in journalism. That you should have experience from another area. What do you think about that?
I think it's right, and me myself, I actually chose, the direction you want to go in journalism. I chose first place photojournalism, so I didn't study written press or radio or television. I studied photojournalism because I wanted to have more layers than just writing. So photojournalism, and second, so my master's was political sciences, geopolitics, and I also spent a year in France, in Paris, studying sort of foreign reporting. So I think I had some more of those layers, but if I was to choose again, if I was 20 again, I think I would definitely do something else as well, as of geography or maybe, I don't know, biology, something like that.
By the way, where were you kind of based? Where did you stay in Paris? Which part of Paris?
It was in central Paris, what you call arrondissement numéro 2, so second
Deuxième arrondissement.
Deuxième arrondissement. And I studied school with the abbreviation CFPJ, so Centre de Formation et de Perfectionnement des Journalistes. So a specific school, like a branch of Sorbonne, La Sorbonne, where you do 2 years of master's. So the system is different in France. In France, you can't just study journalism in itself, but you have to have something and then add 2 years of journalism as of master's. And that's what I did.
So it must have been great experience, no?
It was a great experience. I think that in Paris I fell in love with journalism because unlike in Prague, where we had professors teaching us a lot of theory but not much of practical journalism, and as I did the photojournalism, I didn't really have experience with trying a piece for agencies, trying op-ed for a daily. So the very practical rules and methods and principles of the profession I learned in Paris, and we had great professors, active journalists from Le Monde, AFP, La Libération, and it was a great time. Not for me personally, because I left. I lived alone. My parents were in Prague. I was in Paris, so I was alone in a big city, in Paris, and then having this great time studying and listening to the heroes or the role models of journalism. So it was a great time.
Yeah, of course. I cannot help mentioning that I spent some time there as well, some 3 years living in Montmartre. And it formed me as well, probably because I had a completely different experience from UNESCO and not journalism. But I suppose, back to you, of course, it helped you later on when you became a correspondent in Brussels, that you were francophone. I mean, you could speak French and you already knew the culture, even though the Belgian culture is different, but it's kind of in the sphere of influence, isn't it?
Yes, culturally is very close. Well, Brussels is composed of 2 major cultures. One is Flemish, second one is Wallonian or Walloon. So one culture was common to me. Yes, I was francophone, I could speak French, it helped. But also I think the most important experience from my Paris time was that I knew what is it like to live on your own in abroad, basically, that you have to get by and try to make up your life without helping of your friends, your parents, in a different cultural sort of system when it comes to filling papers and setting up your home in Brussels. So I think I was prepared to be in a foreign country, foreign city, alone, thanks to my Parisian experience, I think.
Now, you mentioned that you served actually twice in Brussels as a correspondent, and when we met there as correspondents, we are talking about years, in my case, 2006, 2007. You were there from 2005, I suppose? 2004 already, after the entry.
Yes.
It seems to me, the way I remember it, that after Czechia entered the European Union together with 9 other countries, in 2004, there was a lot of enthusiasm, there was a lot of kind of positive feeling towards European Union. And that's why most, I think, important Czech media sent people there as correspondents. And my feeling is that this kind of positive thinking gradually kind of started dissipating, whether it's the right word. And then you came back to Brussels in 2021. Is that, I mean, does it correspond to what you feel about how Czechs feel about Brussels? What was it like coming back to Brussels after the gap of several years?
The truth is that the first years after we entered the EU, so Czechia entered the EU, you're right, I think there was more of this enthusiasm, maybe even a joy. Why? Because it was new, and we were, I think, surrounded by diplomats, experts, but people who worked on the enlargement of Czech entrance to the EU. And then when it happened, obviously I think they felt this personal fulfillment that the thing they were working on for so many years had happened. And I think similar thing you can say about us as working on the foreign reporting on the EU, Europe, etc. And then when it happened, you felt kind of accomplished, or I don't know, completed in a way. And slowly but surely, it became the EU membership became a normal, daily
everyday thing,
regular daily business. Sometimes interesting, sometimes utterly boring. So that was the case indeed when I returned to Brussels in 2021. Then the people I met then, the Czech officials, diplomats, experts, MEPs, politicians doing the Brussels Prague business. For them it was like, working just for any international institution or any international business. Nothing really you would be attached emotionally in most cases, right? I may be generalizing a bit, but still in most cases it was just a normal job first. And second, because of the change of media landscape between 2008, 2009 and then 2021, and I talk about the massive growth of internet and above all social networks, Twitter, Facebook, etc. The media pool, I'd say, of Brussels has changed. When we were there together, there were so many journalists, permanent correspondents from so many countries that it would be normal to meet hundreds of them on not daily basis but weekly basis at least during the press conference of
on Wednesdays
after the European Commission meeting, college was in session. Now it was in 2021, and nowadays it's different. Many people are just sitting at home and in Brussels, but not sort of circulating the same buildings and not talking to people physically, but they are just in Brussels or elsewhere and writing about the word or transmitting from distance because of the social networks. And it's different. It's much more, I'd say, cold, and it's not personal anymore.
Do you think COVID played a role as well? I mean, that people got used to sitting at home behind the computer?
COVID certainly, but I think the biggest change really came with the influx of social networks.
And the commissioners, like politicians, I mean, they can tweet. Sometimes I read reports, what he or she tweeted, and it's just, there's no need for a press conference anymore sometimes.
There is no need, and second, if there is a press conference in person, then reality is, in most cases, it's quite boring. Why? Because people, the officials briefing us, are not quite sure who is on the second end of the line, so they never know if, despite them saying in the room this is off record, they can't assure that in a minute or in a second it will be on Twitter or any social networks anyways, because you cannot
really secure the space in a way, so you cannot guarantee the intimacy.
So it makes them more careful? I mean,
it makes them more careful.
More cautious, rather.
More cautious, careful, more general. They don't go into details and not. There's less criticism, I would say. There is less honesty on their side. So the press conferences tend to be, actually boring and not useful for us. So that's another side of the job now, I think.
So these are, I suppose, the negative impacts of social networks and the kind of media space that was created in the past 10 years. Is there something positive?
I think the positive thing is that EU has become more and more, or Europe has become more and more a daily business in a sense. It's less the others, it's less them, it's more us. I see now many young colleagues interested by European affairs. I see more coverage of Europe, be it EU, but also other European countries. I see it more in Czech media, be it television, radio, Britain press. It's not important, but I see it more. It's more as of our business. It's part of us now, which I see as a very positive development.
But this is Czechast, so it should be about Czechia. When I suppose you kept coming back from time to time from Brussels. Do you think it was the same as when you were coming back from Brussels in those years, 2004 to 2008 or something? You know, that there was perhaps more of a difference in the kind of atmosphere then than there is now? I mean, has Czechia changed in this respect?
Well, Czechia certainly has changed. Politically, maybe not so much socially. It will have to be seen, but politically indeed. But I don't really see a massive change or a point of break with the past or with what was there in 2004, 2009 and now. No, I just see that the Czechia has become more of a normal European country in a good sense and a bad sense as well.
You are listening to Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. I'm Vít Pohanka, and my guest today is Kateřina Šafaříková, a Czech journalist, head of the opinion desk at Seznam Zprávy, a Czech news site, and a long-time European Union correspondent in Brussels.
From my own experience, I know that when I was as a correspondent in the United States, it really helped me that I had children, because Vojta started going to school, he had friends, and I was kind of drawn into the family life. You know, we were having people for sleepovers, kids for sleepovers, and I think it kind of deepened my understanding of that country where I was. Now, you were in Brussels first without kids, and then you were there with kids, and I'm just wondering, I would like to ask you, because you've got two beautiful daughters, whether it also changed your perception a little bit of that city.
You're right, it changed. I realized that Brussels is very friendly environment, not only for adults but also for kids. Brussels is a city where you have more, say, more chances, a possibility that someone would stab you in the subway, or that you would be a victim of jihadist attack when comparing to Prague. But on daily basis, at schools, in the kindergartens, in parks, in extra school activities, you will always find a very friendly environment, friendly to kids and friendly for parents. So I realized that we still have here in Prague, we still have much work on, first. And second, you know what? One thing I was really missing then during my second term, it was if you are with kids, you're less free, you're less independent. You have to plan your day more according to your kids, obviously.
And I must say that the most contacts and good sources that would be, sharing information with me, I still had when I came back to Brussels second time, but these were my contacts from my first period. And if I had kids, I think, during my first period, I would never have them. Why? Because I could have spent so many hours in cafeterias and bars and in pubs and dancing places. And that's how I created at least sort of a chunk of my contacts, while the second term I was not so free, I was not so able to enjoy that part of life. So, I stayed home most of the evenings, which is not obviously very handy things to do if you need to meet people, obviously.
So, if we come back to that, to what you are doing now, you are now shaping opinion in Seznam Zprávy.cz, a major media organization here in Czechia. How has that changed the way you work? Because, obviously, you still like to work about foreign policy and what happens abroad, but obviously now you are kind of supervising opinion writers. What is it like? I suppose is my question.
I lead the opinion desk, what we call, so I am the head of it, but I'm also, you may say that I'm this primus inter pares, since I'm also one of the authors, so I'm not special in the sense that I would be only giving giving advices or giving orders, or it would be on me to organize the whole day. I'm also writing, so I am part of a group of 5 commentators, and I don't think my work or my responsibility has changed that much. My sort of a workflow is a bit different. I'm not running in the streets of Prague trying to get information anymore. I'm not in foreign correspondent anymore, but I'm still interested by foreign news, and I still do write pieces about it, sometimes less commentaries, it's more general news, sometimes op-eds, but I am responsible of our desk, which means that I am in constant discussion with senior journalists, men, so I'm the only female in the group, and it's interesting, it's challenging, because it's always sort of like waiting on each other's arguments. It's challenging, but it's interesting because I'm surrounded by intelligent, clever, inspiring men.
Speaking of men and women, I actually, when I was preparing for this interview, I found a piece that you did, I think for Czech radio, about Apolena Rychlíková. Now, for the listeners, because obviously we are now speaking English, could you explain a little bit what it was all about? Because I found that really interesting.
So, Apolena Rychlíková, a Czech journalist, she broke a story about one member of parliament, now actually someone who might be, we'll have to see that, but might be nominated a minister of current government, but...
We can name him, it's
Philip Turek. So now he's just regular MP, member of parliament, but also
very controversial.
Very controversial, and he is being prosecuted for rape. Not convicted yet, but prosecuted, and no one, it's an older case or dates back to, I think, let me see, 2010 to 12, 2010, 2012. So it's quite older case, but no one knew it. Apolena Rychlíková broke the story about him having this very controversial past full of violence. It was not just one story, there were more stories of that kind. He would be beating physically his girlfriends.
Plural, just to make sure. Plural.
Plural, yes. So it was not just one case, there are more cases. And when he was nominated or placed as one of the candidates for ministers by the party of
Mr. Matzinka,
the motorists for themselves, yes. So when he was selected, I would say, selected as a potential minister, I wrote this op-ed, and my main argument was that no one who is prosecuted for crime, specifically for rape, Plus, there is this controversial part of him being a denier of Third Reich, so
pro-Nazi posts.
Pro-Nazi post, pro-Nazi politician. So I claim that no one with that past and that, I would say, characteral baggage should be appointed minister.
You are talking about this opinion piece about Radim Turek, but what I had in mind was actually you drew attention to the fact that when Apolena Rychlíková, this fairly young journalist, very active female journalist, wrote about Filip Turek, she started getting these horrible responses to that piece. And I think that it tells you something about, how at least part of the Czech society still kind of sees women.
That's very true. She was receiving tens of very violent, nasty, vulgar emails or personal messages via social networks daily. And what was my piece about is that no one really stood up in her
defense.
Her defense. And if I say no one, of course I mean politicians, be it members of parliament or government representatives. And I claim that if we want to belong to the West, which was sort of major motto of former government, that we belong to the West, as of Czechia belongs to the West, I claim if you want to really belong to the West, you should act accordingly. And I criticize the lack of any defense on behalf of Apolena Rychlíková, any support or any condemnation of those terrible, nasty remarks on the side of Czech politicians.
So, do you think, if I will ask very, very bluntly, in this respect, do you think Czechia is worse and in a way behind places like Germany, even though in Germany you've got, AfD, even though in Austria you've got parties that are kind of similarly thinking? And is Czechia, I don't know, someone very bluntly again say, it's like in Slovakia, these are still the upstarts, post-communist countries where people just don't know how to behave to women?
I think we are. First, we are because of communism, and second, we are because there's a culture of respect and tolerance, and consent was not groomed, worked on from 1990, basically from regime change. Yeah. So unlike, say, economy, many things were, worked on and many things changed and to the better. But this was left behind, and I think we can see it now, really. There is still a huge difference, be it Germany or Belgium, where we lived both, and Czechia when it comes to treating the women.
Someone might say that, that's what you think, but that's because the politicians are just more hypocritical, because they know what to say, but perhaps they think in the same way, be it another country. If I were to be, I don't want to say cynical, but skeptical.
Right, but still, if it doesn't...
there's more political correctness awareness, in the West.
But I don't see political correctness as a bad thing. I think it's a way how to make your life more respectful to the others and actually more pleasant to live in. One of the change between the Belgian and Czech society that I noticed when we came back from my second Brussels mission, so early 2024, was that my kids, still young at that time, so I have two small daughters, and when we came back, say a few weeks after we resettled in Prague, I got a question from my older daughter. It was over a breakfast at one, weekends, and so I didn't start the discussion, and she asked me, "Mom, why no one is behaving nicely to the others here in Czechia?"
And really, I was struck by this question, and it left me speechless for a few seconds. And I asked her, what do you mean by not being nice? And she said, well, you see it in trams or at school, no one is being nice, really. And then we talked about it, and I realized this. it's another topic that I cover quite a lot, is that there is this latent aggressivity or aggression in the Czech society, which I don't know if we are born with it, but you can surely work on it. You can work on it, and you can try to groom the society in a way that it's less aggressive, that it's more polite, more respectful. We don't have this, and in Belgium and in Germany or even in France where I lived, they have it. Maybe it's hypocritical in a sense that if you were to be really honest as a French man or Belgian man on the street, maybe you would say it's all bollocks, and then women should be just in kitchen and subordinate to men. But in the sphere we all share, in the public sphere, out there on the street, it's more pleasant if you
follow certain norms.
If you follow certain norms, if you are, politically correct, even if it's hypocritical, because then again, it's more. I think it's more livable, and it's just more peaceful, and more healthy. I think, to live in such an environment.
I totally agree with you, and I openly say that quite often when I feel grumpy, which is more and more often, I, for example, catch a train from Žďár to Prague. I just have to tell myself, listen, no one's interested in your grumpiness. Smile, Vít, and even though it's kind of hard to smile at first, then it's kind of better.
That's exactly. You can have the worst day of your life. Bad morning, kids are not listening to you, etc. You are running late for a meeting, but then again, exactly. There's always a minute where you can decide if you put a smile on your face or not. And I think we are not brought up in an environment where that would be the order of the day, unlike in Belgium or in Germany.
And I don't want to kind of get us on this kind of banal level that I make myself smile. But no, I think there's a point in that. And let me add one more point of view. When I started working from Poland as a correspondent, and I started going to Ukraine, I had a discussion with Martin Dorazin, who's our colleague, who's now a correspondent in Ukraine, but who spent many, many years in Russia. And I told him, it seems to me the more east I go, and this is a very broad generalization, of course, that people are more kind of frowning and there's less people smiling and greeting. And he said, yeah, well, that's what it is. Here in Moscow, he said, a smile is a sign of weakness, or at least that's how many people understand it. Whereas in some other places, a smile is nearly like an obligation that you should smile. And in this respect, this is related. I actually read a guide. It was written by a German, a tourist guide. Mm-hmm. And he was writing about Prague and about Warsaw and comparing. And he said Prague is exactly halfway between Munich and Warsaw.
See, so we're right. That's what we are talking about. So we both spend time on the one edge, and Moscow is the other one, and Czechia is halfway. Yeah. So maybe we should work on it to be more west.
Yeah, we should, and some of us are trying still. Now, Czechia again, 2025. We are just finishing this year as we are speaking. From one point of view, it seems to be a turning point because Mr. Babiš and his ANO party came to power, supported, as we mentioned, by SPD, the Direct Democracy Party, and the motorists for themselves, or motorists as we call them, and ANO party. But I just wonder, do you think it's really a kind of turning point, or is it just a kind of, I would say, a change of accent? Because obviously the supporters of ANO and parties like motorists and SPD have always been with us.
I think the boundaries have shifted indeed. So we are, as you mentioned, end of 2025, but I am almost sure that if it was the year of 2017 or even 2021, and a governing coalition was about to be composed of SPD or motorists themselves, very aggressive, xenophobic, in some cases racist politicians, I think we would see massive protests of
people in the streets. Or let me rephrase it, I'm almost sure it would not go unnoticed, it would not go just like this without a massive public unrest. We saw it when Andrej Babiš had troubles with a conflict of interests. We already saw some protests in the public places, and it was just a conflict of interest of then Prime Minister. Now we are in a situation where I think the most radical government of all European governments will get the confidence in the parliament, and I think it is something. It's not only the accent, I think it is the substance change, really.
So when I read the first reactions in the foreign media to the election results, if I kind of sum it up and simplify slightly, it says, here is Czechia, and it joins Slovakia and Hungary in this kind of, anti-EU, at least verbally, camp, this kind of anti-immigration, quite often openly racist camp. That was a fair assessment, do you think?
I think it was a fair assessment. I didn't expect this to happen so quickly, but I would just remind the listeners that Andrej Babiš, so the Prime Minister, he has sided with Robert Fico and Viktor Orbán. First place and first opportunity he had in Brussels.
Just before Christmas.
Christmas, during the European Council, so to say the gathering of European leaders. He didn't have to, but he did. Does it mean it will stay like this forever or during the lasting of this government? I don't know. It really remains to be seen. But I definitely share a view of our colleagues from Brussels, a long-time Brussels correspondents, three of them, 3 journalists, and they do write their very nice daily European newsletter. It's called The Morning Post Europe, and they have written, or they have labeled Andrej Babiš as transactional populist. One of the newsletter, one of the edition, it bears this title, transactional populist. I think this is very much true, and I think Andrej Babiš will be changing camps according to his, I would even say, personal preferences. But what has happened until now is that indeed he has joined the camp, the gang of 2, now there are 3. He didn't have to, he did. So it's fair assessment to say that we are now in the group of Orbán and Fico.
You mentioned the years 2021, that something like this wouldn't happen, or there would be demonstrations, etc., etc. So what do you think changed?
Well, it's not that just Czechia changed, but the overall reality has changed. I think it all started in the United States. With MAGA movement and Donald Trump and the immense power of digital tycoons like Elon Musk. If you add all this into one bag, then you come to a conclusion that what's happening in the state, or what's happening to a certain extent in Germany or in France or in Austria, is actually happening in Czechia, which is that democracy has shifted elsewhere. We are all on social networks. We have all of us. We have our truth, our version of history, our narratives, as they call it, and it's very difficult to lead responsible, mainstream, good old politics in such an environment. And you have politicians who are thriving on disinformation, on lies, on Twitter politics, and it's not only Donald Trump, but it's also Andrej Babiš and his government, especially the leader of SPD, Tomio Okamura, who is constantly on Facebook and other social networks. I even doubt that he actually does chair the lower chamber of parliament, because I think he spent most of his daily hours
online. Anyways, I don't think the Czech situation is in any way specific. I just think that we are in Trumpian era or Trumpian version, but Czech version of Trumpian era.
You know, one interesting thing that I discussed together with Jiří Pehe, this political scientist, but also Dan Kaiser, who's a commentator, and I mentioned, you know, Andrej Babiš, okay, he's got Czech citizenship, but his Czech was not very good when he went into politics. He had to learn Czech, and he's Slovak, I mean, by birth. Tomio Okamura is now the Speaker of the lower house of Czech Parliament, and with the name Tomio Okamura, which is obviously not Czech, which is Japanese, he's you know, urging people to fight against immigration, etc. And Jiří Pehe was coming to the conclusion, well, Czech society perhaps is kind of tolerant. We don't mind, you know, that a Slovak person, or a person born in Slovakia, is our prime minister, and that there are people like Tomio Okamura who are, you know, people. And Dan Kaiser was actually saying, well, maybe they just don't care, you know, I mean, they don't give a toss. What would you think is closer to the truth?
I think Dan Kaiser is closer to the truth. Why? Because I don't see Czech society as being tolerant. Again, and here I'm coming to my previous point. I think one should work, be an individual person or society, on what you call tolerance. It's not that you are born with tolerance. It's something you have to learn in your life, I think. And I don't share this idea that Czechia has been a good student of tolerance. I actually think, or I'm persuaded, that we are, yes, ignorant, or say indifferent.
Indifferent, yeah.
Indifferent. Put it in this.
The word.
Yeah.
And just to put it into context, I mean, I having spent, you know, quite a few years in Poland, I said, you know, I can't imagine that in Poland it would be tolerable for the majority of the electorate if they had Prime Minister like Andrej Babiš, for example, who is not born Polish, you know, whereas in Czechia, you know, nobody seems to mind. Yeah.
Yes, and the very funny thing is that those politicians and the whole government, they are, you know, beating hard on the nationalist drum and saying everything for Czechia and Czechia first and Czech national interests first, and they are mentioning or underlining the Czech national interests even more than the previous government did. And it's obviously funny if you look at Tomio Okamura with his background and Andrej Babiš with his background, and then they are the ones who should be the bearer of the Czechism or Czech nationalism. But after all, yeah, it's not really important. They've managed to place themselves as the voice of unhappy or unsatisfied Czech people, and we just don't care what the reality or the truth is or what the background is. So again, I don't think, yeah, we are ignorant, but I think we just don't care. We're so much indifferent towards many, many aspects.
Probably the last question. So what do you see coming in 2026?
Well, I will stick to my field, my territory, as they say, so it's foreign policy, and here is a big question mark. This is not the way to escape your question, but look, a few weeks, I'd say, ago, I would answer you saying it would be just Andrej Babiš who would lead the foreign policy. He is the strong man of the government. He wants to be the strong man of government. So whatever you call foreign policy, it will be really up to Andrej Babiš to decide and to put it in place. I was struck by the fact that the foreign minister, Mr. Matsinka, the head of motorist party, that the first day he was in the office, just right after he was just sworn into office, that he sacked top officials of the ministry, including those who were responsible for our security strategy, for sanctions, for arm exports, etc., handing out licenses for it. And so he sacked them, really experienced career diplomats,
And I don't know why. I mean, as of until now, we don't have the answer why he did it, what's his goal, what he has in mind, what is his longer sort of a plan, whether it was in line with Andrej Babiš, the rest of the government or not, who was the motivator. We are just lacking answers to those questions. So I am very curious, and I can't wait to see what the new year will bring us when it comes to foreign policy, because I think we might be surprised.
Well, Katka, thanks very much, even though this is not very optimistic ending of this interview, but thanks very much for sharing your ideas and opinions, which I think are very sharp, as always. And it's been a pleasure meeting you again.
Thanks for having me, and have a good day.
So, that was my conversation with Kateřina Šafaříková, journalist, commentator, and I think one of the sharpest voices reflecting on Czech society and politics today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Czechast. If you enjoy this episode or any other of the podcast, please remember to like or follow it, or even better, share it with a friend. It really helps us bring you more conversations like this about Czechia and its society today. You'll find many more stories, interviews and news about Czechia at radio.cz. Thanks for listening once again. I'm Vít Pohanka. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, naslyšenou.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.